Hey guys, so today's going to be a pretty big video, and I really want to make this video because I've been getting extremely frustrated just like looking in Battleground chat, Arenas chat, even watching the AWC, watching YouTube videos. It's like I'm constantly seeing like discussions and talk around how overpowered Elemental is right now, or like how ridiculous it is, or how nerfed it needs to be. Even on Twitter, like I'm seeing this absolutely everywhere I go, and I really want to address this. So I just got done watching the AWC match where the agents were fighting the fiends, and if you watch that match, it perfectly describes, I think, the state of Elemental right now. So yes, while our damage is overpowered, that's literally the only thing we have that really keeps us alive. So if we don't have that insane damage, because Elemental is literally a glass cannon, more of a glass cannon than every other class in the game right now. If we don't have that damage, we're going to have this constant pressure on us. And since we're trained almost every single game, if you look at the stats, you can see that Elemental is the most trained spec in the game right now. Always the first one to die, at least in arena matches. If we don't have that constant pressure, then they're just going to train us even harder and then kill us. And since we only have one wall, excluding like Earth Elemental, which I don't really consider a wall, then we're just dead. There's nothing else you can do. And so I want to discuss like maybe some possible ways Blizzard could fix Elemental to compensate for this, as well as like address some of the major issues that make it more difficult, and also kind of go over like the AWC match. So if you watch the Agents Field versus Field match, you would see that the Elemental was always top damage, right? Except for the second round, which I'll address in a minute. So the Elemental was always top damage in the games that they won. But even in the last game, you saw that Big Max, his damage was almost as much as the Shaman. But if you also look at the Hunter class, they also have tons of traps and utility that can't be killed. They have like Turtle, Feign Death, Ross. They just have so many more defensives and utility versus Elemental. But then he also did just as much damage. So I just hate how like that wasn't addressed at all. And then the other thing too is that in the second game, the Shaman did 22,000 damage. Why? Because he was trained the whole time while his healer was on CC. And yeah, maybe they like messed up a little bit, but like he should have been able to still live. Any other class in that situation would have been able to live. The Hunter could have just turtled. The Rogue would have just like stealthed or cloaked or evasioned, right? A mage could have just ice blocked. The Paladin could have bubbled. Like literally every other class in the game would have been able to survive that situation. Elemental or Enhance probably are like the only specs in the game that would have died there. And of course he died there. And that was the only game that they lost. And what happened? He was trained so hard, he did 0 damage, and he just died through his wall, his one wall that he had. And he was even healing, which is the funny part, because that's the thing that's getting buffed on Tuesday, is the healing surge. And so he was even healing with Spirit Walker's Aegis, so that they couldn't kick him. And he still died through all of that. And so I just thought that was very funny, because it perfectly explains the state of Elemental. Our damage is very, very high right now. I will admit that. It could use nerfs. But since Blizzard doesn't ever compensate it in the ways that they need to, they're compensating it with a healing surge buff, a 15% healing surge buff, when you can already only use like 4 healing surges in a meta where every single spec has an MS effect, so that your healing is already reduced by a massive amount. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like they could do literally anything else, and I feel like it would be just way better. So let's go over a few things that could possibly change to make it easier for Shaman. So one of the biggest problems I have with Shaman right now is I think we're like the class in the entire, we're the highest class in the game that has like the most amount of global cooldowns, right? So like every single ability you use is on the global cooldown. The only abilities I think that aren't on the global cooldown are like Spirit Walkers. So like if I start casting like Lava Burst here, right? And then I can use Spirit Walkers. So that's off the global cooldown. But it's purgeable. It's dispellable. And so as I've found a lot of times, as soon as I use Spirit Walkers, it just instantly gets dispelled anyways. So a lot of times it's almost not even worth it. And then the only other thing that's off the global are your earth elemental and your fire elemental abilities from Primal Elementalist. So the only other off global ability that you get is when you spec into it as a talent. And so I think this is something that really needs to be addressed, because having all of your utility, all of your healing, all of your damage, all of your defensives, everything is on the same global cooldown. It really, really, really hinders us as far as what we can do. And I've even had comments on my YouTube videos about like my series videos that I've been doing for like Arena, saying how my setup was too slow. And I just I get so confused, because it's like, what do you mean my setup is too slow? Like, this is what I have to do, you know? In order for me to burst, like, I have to use Ice Fury, I have to use Frost Shock, I have to use Primordial Wave, I have to use Sky Fury, Fire Elemental, Meteor, Lava Burst. Like, you have to use all of these abilities, not exactly in that order, but you have to use all of these abilities in order to like just do one mini burst, right? And this isn't even the max amount of bursts you can do. You still have to like flame shock every single target. Then you have to make sure that they don't dispel it. You have to make sure that they don't use like a defensive or like grounding totem or something right when you're about to burst. So you have to like wait a little bit. And then like your earth shocks on the same global cooldown. So like, yeah, while our damage is still really crazy, we also have to use like 8 global cooldowns in order to even hit those numbers. And so a lot of times people just don't know how to even counter the elemental burst. Like I do. As soon as I see like Stormkeeper and Primordial Wave, I'm watching it like a hawk, because I know that they're about to burst, and then I just drop grounding and absorb all of it, right? And it's so easy to do that. I had that happen to me like 4 times yesterday doing solo shuffle. Holy Paladins, they just dispel all of your flame shocks all the time throughout the entire fucking match. Mistweaver, they use Peace Weaver, and then they just dispel all your flame shocks, and then you can't burst. And they're like, if you fight a good player, I've gone against good players who do that exactly when they see me use Primordial Wave. So they know exactly when to use it. And then you know what happens? It just deletes all your burst. And then goodbye damage. You know, the one thing that's keeping you alive in this match. Okay, so now the next topic is basically like how all of our utility is killable. So say you're getting ready to counter like a lock or a priest that's coming up to you, right? If you want to stop their fear or something, or like charm or sleep, you know, like sleepwalk, whatever, and you pre-drop tremor, because you have to. They changed it so you can't use tremor during the effect anymore. If you drop it before they do anything, a good player, all they're gonna do is they'll, like a priest for instance, they'll run up to you, wait for you to drop tremor, kill it with 1 global, and then fear you. So it's basically useless. Like, there's no point in using it. The only time it's useful is like against either a bad player, or like if you catch it right at the end of a fear cast or something. Because even a warlock, they'll try to juke it. They'll start casting fear, they'll see you drop they'll cancel, you'll drop tremor, and then they'll kill tremor. And it's the same fucking thing with like every single totem, right? You drop earth grab, they'll just kill it, and then they'll freedom. You drop earthbind, they'll just kill it. You drop static field totem, they'll just kill it. You drop sky fury, they'll just kill it. You drop grounding, they'll just kill it. And so like, every single utility Shaman has right now is not only on the global cooldown, but now it's also killable. Shaman is like the only class in the entire game that has all of their utility as a killable resource. And I just don't understand that. There's like a few exceptions to this, like Earthen Wall is pretty difficult to kill, so most people don't really kill Earthen Wall for restoration. And I want to say Healing Stream or Healing Tide. One of them is a little bit trickier to kill too, but not as hard as Earthen Walls, so people can still kill it pretty fast, especially melee. And so like all these killable utility totems, like Counter Strike, instantly killed, Static Field Totem, instantly killed. It's just like nothing here really helps you out as much as people think. Now the other side of this too is that we also have to spec into all of this utility, right? Almost nothing is given to us baseline. Blizzard put basically our entire spellbook into the talent tree, which shamans have like the most, I think, abilities in the game besides maybe druid, but that's only because they have so many forms. And so now we have to spec into each individual thing. The reason this sucks is because say I'm going up against a shaman. Well, now I have to go into cleanse spirit in order to dispel hex. So now I have to find a point to take somewhere. Well, now it's like, what if I'm going up against caster cleave? Well, I want elemental warding because it reduces magic damage taken. But it's like, what do I take a point out of now, right? I want focused insight for my extra healing, especially now that healing surge is getting buffed. But where am I going to get 2 points from? I can't take 2 points out of anything. It's like, oh, do I sacrifice Spirit Walker's Aegis? Do I sacrifice Totem Recall? Do I sacrifice Lightning Lasso? Do I sacrifice my only, like, utility? Do I sacrifice my defensives for like extra healing, which doesn't make any sense? It's just like there's no alternative for you to pick anything else, and it really sucks because now we don't really have like any options. There's like a couple options, but like it's very difficult to actually sacrifice something. So what I think Blizzard needs to do is they need to take stuff off the global cooldown. They need to give us more stuff baseline. They need to increase our defensives either by giving us another defensive, or like maybe we could get like 2 charges of Astral Shift and you can use it while stunned, and it's 45% damage, 55% damage reduction instead of 40. Give us stuff like Spirit Wolf baseline. Give us stuff like Ancestral Wolf Affinity baseline, so that way we can like have healing and passive damage reduction. So that way we can take things like Focused Insight, and like if we have more utility baseline, we can actually spec into stuff like this. Maybe Blizzard gives us like Shamanistic Rage and Astral Shift, but it'd be kind of like the same thing. It's just like 2 charges of the same thing, really. But like these are big steps that Blizzard could take in order to actually improve and to compensate for all of these like defensives, healing buffs, or whatever. Yeah, sure, they can nerf our damage. Again, no, there's not a single shaman that's like, oh yeah, our damage is shit. No one's really saying that, but what they need to do is they need to nerf the damage in a way that not only keeps it fun, but also doesn't ruin the builds or make the spec have like even more RNG dependent, right? So like say all they did was nerf Lava Burst base damage. This does literally nothing. All this does is make it so like the downtime in between our bursts feels fucking horrible, because now you have to rely on your burst even more. Now you have to like pray that you get an Earthshot crit and that you get multiple overloads. So now you're like just relying on RNG even more, because now you can't really kill anything. Like you can't put out that constant pressure, which is also, again, keeping you alive because it keeps the enemy team away from attacking you. And this doesn't just go for arena either. This is for like all PvP in general. Another thing too is that like you can't even have your fire elemental and your earth elemental out at the same time. So this is something else that Shaman has to deal with. Is they're also one of the only classes in the game that has to sacrifice damage for healing. And this is mostly for enhancement, because your Maelstrom weapon, you either have to spend into your healing or your damage. Whereas Elemental's problem is you have to hard cast healing, and so you just get kicked all the time. So they're both bad, but in different ways. So like not being able to use both your elementals, because your earth elemental increases your max health by 15% and gives you an extra stun, which I mean is gonna DR probably because you have Lightning Lasso and Cap Totem. But like at least it would help, right? It would at least be something. So now you have 2 pets that you can have out. Gives a little bit more pressure because your Earth LE also does a little bit of damage, not very much, but then you can also have your Fire Elemental out, and so you can keep doing your consistent damage. Whereas if you don't have your Fire LE out, or you have to sacrifice it to put out your Earth Elemental, now you just lost a whole bunch of fucking damage, which is like part of the thing that's keeping you alive. So it's like this vicious cycle of you're sacrificing damage for healing, but now you're also, because you're not doing damage, you're sacrificing your defensives basically. And so it's just this vicious cycle. We already did a video on all of the things that I think Shaman should get nerfed. You can watch that video. It's called the future for Elemental, where I go over all the things that I think should be nerfed. So I don't really want to redo that here, but again, Blizzard can't nerf our damage, like just baseline damage, because that doesn't solve the issue. So if Blizzard starts doing that, then they're just going to hurt us even more. And they're already kind of doing that on Tuesday. Yeah, we're getting a little bit more consistent damage through Flame Shock, but we're also losing like some primordial surge damage, which you could probably start taking splintered elements now. But again, when you fight like a holy paladin or a mistweaver, it's like this can really fuck you up, because if you don't get your primordial wave burst out because they dispel everyone as soon as you use your burst, then you're not going to get any of those splintered elements procs. And the other reason this is an issue too with all the dispels, which is another thing I think drastically needs fixing. Shamans need a lot more dispel protection. So control of lava isn't enough. So like say you have a holy paladin or a mistweaver on the opposite team. Say you watch them dispel after you use primordial wave because you know that they're going to dispel, and you want to try to make sure that you get your burst out, right? So you're being very careful. If they dispel all those flame shocks, now guess what? You have to reapply every single flame shock. So your flame shock, when you run Flames of the Cauldron, it's only 4.5 seconds. But 4.5 seconds for 3 flame shocks, at most you're going to be able to get 2 out, right? Because primordial wave buff only lasts 16 seconds. So now you have to reapply 2 flame shocks. And then what? They're just going to dispel them again. They're just going to, as soon as they see you primordial wave, they're just going to keep dispelling flame shocks. Dispel your flame shocks. Dispel your flame shocks. It just feels so shitty as elemental, because like that's the only thing that you're really there for, is for the damage. And it just feels like shit because now you can't even do that. So elemental needs dispel protection way more than control of lava. I mean, why is it that like an affliction warlock, if you dispel UA, it basically kills you, but like if you dispel flame shock, which is actually necessary for a shaman's damage, whereas like UA isn't necessary, then it only does like 30,000 damage. Like that's it. That's all that happens. Oh, it knocks them in the air. Oh boy. Well, every class has instant cast abilities anyways, so it doesn't even matter. So the 30,000 damage, like, it's a decent amount, but it doesn't give enough dispel protection to where people are disincentivized from actually dispelling it, right? So like if that did like 100,000 damage, now people really aren't going to want to dispel it. But I don't know how I feel about that route either, because it's also extremely punishing for like new healers. So I'm not really sure like what the route they should take with the dispel protection is. I don't think UA should be one-shotting people, but I also don't think it should be doing maybe a lot of damage. Maybe they should just make it undispellable. Like why can you not dispel a fire mage's combustion now, but you can dispel a shaman's flame shock, right? And they're also buffing flame shock. Like I just don't understand this. Like flame shock is my #1 damage, like most games, and they're buffing that, and then they're like nerfing primordial surge, which really wasn't the issue either. I don't know. It's just super weird to me. But so we need more dispel protection. We need more stuff off the global. We need more stuff baseline. We need more defensives, whether that's through like more astral shift charges or like usable while stunned, a combination of both. I feel like even if it's just usable while stunned, that's not going to be enough. Like we need like 2 charges of it or something. We need like a higher baseline percentage damage reduction. We need increased healing, maybe shorter cast time or something. It feels really bad when you can only use like 4 healing surges and then you're out of mana, and you also have to sacrifice either your purges, your earth shield, or your healing surge. That's another thing too, is earth shield is dispellable, so every single time you put earth shield on, which is 5,000 fucking mana, it's going to just get dispelled every single time. And so like you can't even like increase your healing on yourself or get healed through your earth shield, because 90% of the time it just gets fucking dispelled anyways. And so like maybe we could also get like nature swiftness as a base ability, because like it's a 1-minute cooldown and you get an instant healing cast. So like all these little things could definitely help out. It depends on which route they want to take. I'm not really sure what route I want to take. I feel like I want good healing, but at the same time I'd rather have better walls. It'd be nice to have both, but then we would have to sacrifice more damage for that. But again, they just need to make sure they nerf the damage in the RNG aspect and make it a little bit more consistent. But Blizzard just really needs to fucking fix our class. So again, I want to go back to like the AWC stuff. As soon as they won that first game, everyone was talking about how much damage the elemental did. But no one said anything about the second game. No one said anything about how fast the shaman died, about how he only had one wall, about how the healer was chain CC'd, and the whole time the shaman was running away healing, not doing any damage, and still died through all of that. No one said a fucking word. I just thought that was like super fucking annoying because everyone's so quick to shit on shaman's damage when this is like the first fucking time we've been in this position of damage in a long, like, I can't even remember when, maybe since vanilla. I just get so frustrated when everyone just talks about our damage but doesn't talk about like our lack of defensive. It feels just like the whole community is like against shaman right now, and it's very frustrating, especially as a shaman, because I know exactly like how you can counter the class. And a lot of the times people die from our class is because they're just not paying attention. If you run the Stormkeeper build, right here, this is what most people are complaining about, which I don't even understand why. Because, like, it's so fucking easy to counter that it's unreal. Like, you kick Stormkeeper, and, like, everything's so visually obvious that they're about to burst that you just use your defensives, or you CC chain them, or, you know, there's, like, so many options you can do to prevent this burst from killing you, or you can just run away. One-shotting someone with the Stormkeeper build is heavily reliant on like two things: whether or not you have Power of the Maelstrom and how many Magma Chamber stacks you have. So in order to do good damage with the Stormkeeper build, first you need to make sure you have Maelstrom to even use it. You also need to build up your Magma Chambers. This isn't as necessary, but it'll help you actually get the one-shot. So you just gotta make sure you have enough Maelstrom, right? You gotta use your Fire Elemental. You gotta use your Primordial Wave and your Stormkeeper. You gotta drop Sky Fury. Use your Meteor. Use your Lava Burst. Use your Earthshock. Use your Lightning Bolt. Use your Earthshock. Use your Lightning Bolt. And then maybe another Meatball. You see how many globals I had to use there? You have Lava Burst, Primordial, Stormkeeper, Sky Fury, Fire Elemental, Earthshock, or Lightning Bolt, Earthshock, Lightning Bolt. 8 fucking global cooldowns you had to use for that entire rotation. If you don't recognize that by the time like you die and you don't do anything about it, I'm sorry, but that's like your own fault. Unless it's like a 1v1, right? If it's like a 1v1, that's different. But if it's like a 3v3 and you see the shaman casting Stormkeeper, you saw him use his Primordial Wave, you saw him drop Sky Fury, and you don't do anything about that, I don't know what to tell you at this point. Your Primordial Wave and your Stormkeeper only last for like 16 seconds. So if you don't do something within that time frame, you just fucking lose the whole go in general. The damage is crazy still, right? So like a lot of times, even when you pop wall, it'll still do some insane damage. But again, we're saying you can nerf the damage. That's not what we're concerned about. But it's the fact that a lot of people that die to this shouldn't die. And it's because they just don't understand how to counter it. How to counter this? You kick Stormkeeper, you run away, you dispel Flame Shocks, you drop Grounding. You know, there's tons of things you can do in order to prevent this. Nether Ward, you can get them to fucking damage themselves, right? As a Warlock, or Spell Reflect. So, like, there's tons of ways to counter this, but a lot of people just don't understand it yet on, like, what to do. And so, it's like, can you really blame the shaman at that point, right? Obviously, again, the damage is very powerful, and it can get nerfed, but they have to do it the right way, and they have to compensate for it. And if they don't, then shaman is just fucking a useless class again. Another way they can help out shaman too is by also giving us more mobility, like Gust of Wind. Like, I feel like stuff like this should be baseline. Like, why is Spirit Walk not baseline? And then maybe you can spec into like Gust of Wind or something. But like, having to choose between these two talents also feels shitty, you know? And like, why is Hex like a talent that we have to spec into? Why is Earth Grab a talent that we have to spec into, you know? It's like this whole tree was made in mind of like just PvE content. Like, it's almost like they didn't even design any of this in the, like with the thought of a shaman playing PvP. It's so there's just a whole bunch of bullshit around the whole rotation in general. maybe something they could do is just make it so you don't have to use so many globals for your burst, and but like lower the damage, so that way it's like it's a faster burst, but it's also less globals, right? But so those are my thoughts on the shaman tree, ways to fix them, things that I think are frustrating right now, and like how we can compensate for stuff. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I've been getting really frustrated with everyone talking about shaman lately, so make sure to check me out at twitch.tv/metallurgy, and maybe I'll catch you guys in a live stream during the weekend. And until then, see you guys later.